Hello everyone. Please tell me, which city are you listening from? What time is it there? Is everything okay? Or does it feel like someone's watching you? It started with a draft. Jacob had just moved into the old rental house on Ash Grove Lane. It was tucked between two larger homes, barely noticeable from the street, with chipped white paint, a wraparound porch that moaned underfoot, and ivy that crept up the bricks like silent fingers. It had stood empty for years, the agent said. The landlord had moved abroad and kept it as is. Jacob, a quiet, observant man in his 30s, found the isolation oddly comforting. He wanted silence. He got it. Until the draft. It was the third night when Jacob noticed the cold air blowing into his bedroom, even with the windows shut. It wasn't just cool. It was biting, unnatural, like it came from someplace older, deeper than the earth. He stood in the middle of the room in his sweatpants, socks curling on the wooden floor, arms folded, shivering. He tracked the breeze to the closet. His closet door was closed, but cold leaked from the edges. When he opened it, there was nothing, just hanging shirts, a few boxes, and his suitcase. He ran his hand along the inside. No cracks, no holes, just a wall. He closed the door. The next morning, it was colder, and the closet door was open. Jacob assumed he'd forgotten to shut it properly, until the fourth night. He woke up around 3:07 a.m. His mouth was dry. The bedroom was completely still. No wind, no outside noise. The silence pressed against his eardrums, and then he saw the closet door, wide open. A sharp breath left his chest. He was certain he had closed it before bed. He got up, slowly, walked across the room and peered inside. Everything looked the same. Except now, behind the boxes and shirts, he noticed something strange. A faint line across the back wall. A crack. No, not a crack. A seam. Jacob moved the boxers aside, ran his hand across the wall again. His fingers tapped something hollow, something that echoed slightly. He pressed harder. And that's when he saw it. The outline of a door carved directly into the back wall of the closet. It hadn't been there before. It couldn't have been. There was no handle, no lock, just a solid, seamless rectangle, about the size of a narrow door, almost like it had been etched in shadow. He stared at it for several long seconds, and then turned away. But the feeling stuck with him, the feeling that behind that invisible door was something not meant to be seen, not meant to be opened. For the next few days, Jacob avoided the closet. He kept the bedroom light on at night, slept with his back to the wall. But every morning, the closet door was open. Always open. On the seventh day, he taped it shut. Thick black duct tape, all around the edges. That night, he slept heavily, but woke up gasping. The tape was gone, and this time the closet light was on. He hadn't installed a light in there. He didn't even have a bulb in the closet socket, but it was glowing, a soft amber light spilling from the crack where the back wall met the floor. He should have left right then, packed a bag and walked out. But he didn't. He did what no one should do in a house like that. He opened the door behind the closet. It didn't resist. The panel slid inward, revealing a narrow staircase. Number. Dust. No cobwebs. No sign it had been closed for years. just fresh wood, and that unnatural amber glow, like firelight without a flame. Jacob's heart thudded. He took a step, and another. Each step downward felt longer than the last, as though space stretched. As though time hesitated. The light grew brighter, but not warmer. The air was still cold, but heavy now, full of silence that hummed with tension. When he reached the bottom, he entered a small room, square windowless, with walls the color of dried parchment. In the center was a mirror, large, antique, with a brass frame slightly tarnished, and in the mirror he saw himself, but not quite. The reflection blinked half a second later. Its mouth curved ever so slightly, even when Jacob's did not. And in its eyes was a dull, knowing gleam. Jacob stepped closer. The reflection didn't move. Then it smiled. Not Jacob. It smiled. Jacob stumbled back. His breath caught in his throat. He turned around, ran up the stairs, slammed the closet shut, and pushed a chair in front of it. He didn't sleep that night. But the next morning, the closet was open again. The chair was gone. He found it in the hallway, facing the wall and the mirror. He never saw it again. But something came through. It began slowly, a whisper behind his ear when he was alone. Lights flickering in the kitchen. The smell of wet earth at 3 a.m. His reflection grew, off, more detached. It stopped sinking. At first, it was minor. A blink too slow. A smile held a beat longer. Then it would simply stare, even when Jacob wasn't. And soon, he wasn't sure if he was staring at himself at all. On the 12th night, he woke up to scratching. Inside the walls. No, inside the mirror. He found the closet door open again. The back wall, gone. The space behind it, pitch black. The mirror was back, standing there, waiting. That night, he put bedsheets over every reflective surface. The TV, the bathroom mirror, his phone, even. The kettle. But the next night, the sheets were gone. All of them. He called a priest. The man came, listened, nodded. He didn't stay more than an hour. When Jacob asked what he thought, the priest whispered, "Not a ghost, not a spirit, a space." Something came through a space. "What kind of space?" Jacob asked. The priest didn't answer. He just walked away. Jacob began recording himself at night. But each morning, his footage was corrupted. No matter what device he used, it always cut at exactly 2:59 a.m. Audio replaced by low static and a soft hum, like someone breathing, almost singing. Then one day, he woke up in a different room. Not just a different position, a completely different room. A different bed, smaller. The sheets were white. The light was wrong. The window view was blank, just fog. He stumbled outside and found no house, just corridors. Endless white corridors. His voice echoed endlessly. There were no doors. Furniture, no sound. He ran until he passed out. Then he woke up again, back in his room. But it wasn't the same room anymore. The angles were slightly off. The corners stretched too far. The floor dipped ever so slightly. The light was too dim, and yet too sharp. The shadows were moving subtly, and the closet was gone. There was only the door, always open, and the mirror. It now hung on his wall, nailed into place. He couldn't remove it, couldn't cover it. His reflection, it didn't mimic him anymore. It watched him, sleepless, cold, still, and Jacob. He's still there, in the house on Ashgrove Lane. Or something that looks like him is, because the real Jacob crossed the doorway behind the closet, and never came back. I had been renting the old farmhouse for 2 weeks before I found the staircase. It was a quiet place, nestled deep in the countryside, where fog hung in the fields like a heavy breath and nights were wrapped in the sound of wind through dying trees. I came here to disconnect from noise, from news, from people. I needed the silence to write again, at least that's what I told myself. Maybe I was running too, but the house didn't care about my reasons. The farmhouse had been standing for over a century. Its wooden bones creaked at night like old men whispering. The rooms were large, with high ceilings and narrow windows. My bedroom was on the second floor, with walls covered in fading floral wallpaper and a closet door that never quite shut. The first week was uneventful. I wrote. I drank too much coffee. I stared into the woods from my bedroom window and wondered if I'd made a mistake. But it was quiet. Blissfully quiet. Then one night, exactly 2 weeks after I moved in, I noticed something strange. While rearranging furniture, I moved the tall bookcase away from the wall, and saw it, a rectangular outline, a seam in the wallpaper, almost like a hidden panel. I ran my fingers along it. It felt hollow behind. I didn't plan to open it. I swear I didn't, but some part of me, a quiet, unreasonable part, felt compelled, like I had already decided and just hadn't acted yet. I fetched a box cutter and sliced along the seam. The panel peeled back easily. Behind it was a wooden door. Old, grayish, with a small rusted handle and no keyhole. It looked untouched by time. No cobwebs, no dust, as if someone had opened it recently. And behind that door, stairs. Narrow wooden steps spiraling down into darkness. There shouldn't have been stairs there. The farmhouse had a ground floor and a basement. That was it. The room on the other side of this wall should have been the old kitchen pantry. But these stairs didn't go sideways. They went straight down, deep, hesitated. Not because I was scared. Not then, but because something felt off. The air near the opening was colder, stiller, as if the stairs were swallowing warmth. I stood there with the door ajar for almost 10 minutes before finally closing it back and sliding the bookcase over again. But the damage was done. I had seen them, and now I couldn't unsee. For days I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was just a crawl space. A weird farmhouse design, nothing more. But every night at 3:13 a.m., I would wake up. No sound, no movement. Just a sudden knowing like something was standing behind that wall. Watching, waiting. The dreams started soon after. I dreamt of stairs. Endless, decaying, wooden steps spiraling down into a vast, windowless space. Sometimes, I heard something breathing in the dark. Sometimes I dreamt I walked down and never stopped, just spiraled. Then came the sound, a low tap, 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 like fingers on hollow wood, from behind the bookcase. I checked it, I always checked, I always found nothing. Until one morning, I noticed the bookcase was an inch out from the wall. I hadn't touched it. That night, I left a small camera in the room, aimed at the wall. I reviewed the footage the next morning, hours of silence. Then, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the camera glitched, just for a second. Then the bookcase, slowly, very slowly, began to move forward, Not pushed, not pulled. It slid, as if the wall had taken a shallow breath. No one visible, no wind, no movement anywhere else. And when it stopped, nothing came out, but the door behind it was open. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed, lights on, a crowbar in my hand. I told myself I'd nail it shut in the morning. I never got the chance. Because that night, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Soft, deliberate, ascending. Wood creaking gently under invisible weight. Coming up, coming toward the door behind my wall. I should have run. I should have burned the house and left that night. But I couldn't move. Something held me in place. Not a force, but a thought. What happens when it reaches the top? The steps stopped at what I calculated was floor level. Just on the other side of the thin panel, I held my breath. Then came a sound I will never forget. Breathing, right behind the wall. Heavy, wet, inhuman. Then, a whisper, soft as silk dragged across bone. You found it. I slammed the bookcase back against the wall, nailed it in place, taped it, stacked boxes in front, everything. But none of that could seal the knowing that something lived there now. Something woke up when I peeled that wallpaper. Days passed. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. Every time I blinked, I saw that staircase behind my eyes, dreaming with me, and the sound, the whispering. It got closer, not louder, closer. Then I started seeing things. In the corners of mirrors, reflections that didn't match. A face, pale and bloated, with eyes like polished glass, watching me. Sometimes, when I left my room and returned, the furniture would be rearranged slightly, as if someone else had been there, mimicking my life. But it didn't want my life. It wanted presence. It wanted me to acknowledge it, to walk the stairs. I contacted a priest. He never made it to the house. His car was found in a ditch 3 miles away, empty, door wide open. No blood, no signs of struggle, just gone. That night, the staircase door opened by itself. And this time, I didn't stop myself. I took a flashlight and descended. The air turned wrong after the 7th step. Not cold, not warm, just wrong. I felt heavier. The light barely worked. Shadows moved like water. The stairs spiraled, impossibly downward. More than the farmhouse should allow. 30 steps, 60, 100. I lost count. Finally, I reached the bottom. A room, round, stone walls, carvings like the ones on the headboard, old, deep, and humming. In the center, a mirror cracked, covered in black stains, and behind it myself. But I wasn't moving. I blinked. The reflection didn't. Then it smiled. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. Just that the next morning I woke up back in my bed. But it wasn't my bed. Not anymore. Because when I walked outside, the sky was red. The trees were upside down, and there were no roads. Only fog. And behind me, the farmhouse door was gone. Just the staircase, waiting. The house was quiet when I moved in. It was an old Victorian-style home, nestled on the edge of a small forested town called Elmridge. I had taken the job offer hastily, a temporary teaching position at the nearby high school. The house came. Cheap, too cheap for the size and location. But I didn't ask too many questions. I needed a place, somewhere to start over. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I arrived. The house stood tall and narrow, with faded red brick, moss climbing the sides, and windows that stared like lifeless eyes. The key was left under a flower pot, just like the agent had told me. Inside, the place smelled of age and dust, with long-forgotten memories lingering in the walls. The wooden floor creaked with every step. Most of the rooms were empty, save for a few old chairs and one covered mirror in the hallway. But it was the attic door that caught my attention immediately. It was at the end of the upstairs hallway, an old hatch with a pull string hanging from the ceiling. The string swung ever so slightly when I first saw it, even though all the windows were shut tight. I didn't pull it. Not that day, not the next either. But I always felt it. The presence of that door, like it wanted to be noticed. My first week passed in relative calm, aside from strange noises at night, creaks above me like footsteps, slow and deliberate. I chalked it up to the house settling, or maybe squirrels in the roof. But one night, something different happened. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up with a jolt. No sound, no movement. Just an overwhelming feeling that someone was standing at the foot of my bed. I couldn't move at first. My breath was frozen in my throat. My skin crawled like it was being watched. But when I finally sat up and turned the light on, there was no one. The next morning, I noticed something odd. Dust on the hallway floor near the attic door, but there were footprints. Small, bare, human. They led from the hatch to my bedroom door. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the evening downstairs, lights on, TV playing softly. At 2:55 a.m., I heard the creaking again from above. I crept to the stairs and listened. A dragging sound, like something being pulled across the attic floor. I held my breath, then silence. The next day, I called a locksmith and asked if they could come inspect the attic door. They refused. One man said, "You're in the old Bellamy place, aren't you?" "No, sir. That house, that attic. We don't touch it." Click. I tried looking up the house's history. There was nothing online. No articles. No property records. It was like it didn't exist before I moved in. That night, I decided to look. With a flashlight and a kitchen knife tucked into my belt, I walked to the attic hatch and pulled the string. The wooden ladder fell slowly, groaning like it hadn't been touched in years. The air grew cold instantly. As I climbed, the light flickered behind me, then went out. Up in the attic, the air was thick, unmoving. The beam of my flashlight revealed cobwebs, old furniture, and something in the corner. A rocking chair, and in it, a shape, not quite human, not quite still. It looked like a woman, long white dress, head bent forward, hair hanging down in thick clumps. I couldn't see her face. I couldn't see her breathe. But the chair, it rocked. Slowly back and forth, back and forth. Then, she stopped. She lifted her head, but only slightly. I didn't wait to see more. I backed down the ladder so fast I missed a step and landed hard on the hallway floor. When I looked back up, the hatch had shut itself. I left the house that night. I drove to a motel, 2 towns away, shaking the whole time. I didn't tell anyone. What could I say? That there was a woman in my attic who didn't move like a person. But the worst was yet to come. At the motel, I fell into an uneasy sleep, and I dreamed I was in the attic again. But this time, the rocking chair was empty. The woman was gone. I turned to leave. and she was standing behind me, her face still hidden, arms long and pale, fingers twitching. She didn't speak, but her mouth opened, and I heard something inside my own head. You opened the door. You saw me. Now you belong. I woke up screaming, and I wasn't in the motel bed anymore. I was in my house, in my room, in my bed. The attic door was open, the ladder down, the footprints were back. But now, they weren't coming toward my room. They were leaving it. I packed and ran. I left Elmridge that morning, never returning to the house. I didn't care about the job or the money I lost. I just wanted out. But the dreams didn't stop. Every few nights, I wake up in that attic again. I see her. She's closer now, each time, and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear creaking in my apartment ceiling, as if someone's walking slowly above me, waiting, because the attic wasn't empty, and now, neither is my life. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind of silence you get in the city at 3 a.m. This was thick, stale. It felt like sound itself had been drained from the air. I opened my eyes slowly. The ceiling above me was wooden, old, varnished, and cracked like tree bark. It wasn't mine. The fan above didn't spin, and the light bulb next to it flickered faintly. I sat up. This wasn't my bed. It was wooden, with a thick, scratchy red blanket covering me. I ran my hands over it to see. It smelled like it hadn't been washed in years. This wasn't my room. I turned. There was no TV, no bookshelf, number. Familiar mess. The walls were gray, stripped wallpaper peeling down like skin. There was a small wooden window, shut tight, nailed from the inside. I scrambled out of bed, heart thudding. "Hello," I called, but my voice sounded dull-muted, as if the walls absorbed it. I touched the door handle. Cold. When I opened it, the hallway was darker than the room, lit only by one dim bulb at the far end. I didn't know this house. I walked, barefoot, over creaky, uneven wood. The floor felt warped. Everything smelled of damp and iron. There was an old grandfather clock ticking, but not right. Its tick sounded out of rhythm, sometimes skipping, sometimes stuttering, like a broken heartbeat. Room after room, I wandered. The house was large, much larger than my apartment, but every window was shut, nailed. Every door that looked like it might lead outside was either bricked over or opened into another impossible hallway. The furniture was covered in white sheets, but under them, outlines suggested old chairs, upright pianos, rocking cribs. And then, I saw the first mirror. It stood in the hallway, tall and warped. As I passed it, I glanced, but I didn't stop. Then I froze. My reflection blinked late. I turned back and stared. My face was the same, pale, frightened, but not exact. My reflection's eyes were too wide, too alert, and it smiled just a twitch. Barely there, I backed away. Behind me, the hallway grew longer. The bulb flickered again. Something brushed my foot. I jumped. Nothing was there. I ran. I ran until I was breathless, but the hallway kept shifting. I passed the same mirror, again. Eventually, I collapsed against a wall, gasping. That's when I noticed the photos. Frames lined the walls, old black and white portraits of people I didn't know. Some smiled, most didn't. Their eyes all had one thing in common. They stared at you. Every angle, every corner, their eyes followed. But then I saw me. One of the portraits had my face, dressed in old clothes, standing beside two children I didn't recognize, smiling with hollow eyes. The label below read, Nathaniel, 1894. I stumbled back. My name is Nathan. No one calls me Nathaniel. And that photo, that couldn't be me. Suddenly, a soft tune echoed through the hall. A lullaby played slowly, off-key, like it was being played from a broken toy. I turned. A rocking chair in the room, to the left, had begun to move, back and forth. No one was in it. I stepped inside. The room, the walls here were cleaner, white. There was a crib in the corner, a small nightstand, and on the wall a set of drawings, made in crayon. Stick figures, one tall, one short, one lying down. The one lying down had red scribbled all over it. Then something shifted in the crib. I leaned closer, empty, but then just for a second I saw eyes. Deep, sunken eyes. They blinked, then vanished. I stepped back in fear, knocking over the lamp. When it hit the floor, it flickered in for a heartbeat. I saw something in the corner. A figure, just standing, still, watching. Gone in the next blink. I ran again, through every hallway, every room. Calling, screaming. No answer. Until I heard my name, whispered Nathan, a child's voice, right in my ear. I spun, empty hall. But now I saw something new. The bed, the same bed I woke up in. But it was in the middle of the hallway now. Not in a room, sitting there, waiting. The sheets were pulled down neatly, pillow fluffed, ready. Something inside me said, lie back down, just sleep. Close your eyes, it'll be over. I didn't want to, but my body. It moved on its own. I lay down. My arms felt heavy. Eyes started to close. The last thing I saw was the ceiling again. The same wooden ceiling from before. The fan above. And then darkness. I woke up in my real bed. Sunlight streamed in. The buzz of traffic outside. My TV, my books, everything back to normal. I sat up, dazed. Was it a dream? Then I noticed something on my nightstand. A photo frame, one I didn't own. Inside was a picture, me, dressed in 19th century clothes. With children beside me. Labeled, Nathaniel, 1894. Returned, and from the corner of the room came the sound of a lullaby. Slightly off-key, slowly playing again. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in your bedroom at 3 a.m. No hum of the refrigerator. No distant traffic. No creak of the ceiling fan. It was absolute, like sound had been swallowed whole. I opened my eyes slowly. The room was unfamiliar. The walls were chalk white, textured like unfinished plaster. The ceiling was too low, almost pressing down on me. There was no window, just a single light bulb hanging above, flickering slightly, a cold metal bed beneath me. No blanket, no pillow, just a thin mattress. I sat up. My head pounded like I had slept too long, or maybe not enough. I didn't recognize the clothes I was wearing. Loose gray cotton, like hospital scrubs. I tried to remember where I was before I fell asleep, but it was foggy, like trying to grasp smoke. My apartment. Wasn't I home last night? Or was that a dream? There was only one door, pale blue, no handle. I stood and approached it, pressing my ear against the surface. Nothing. I knocked gently. The sound didn't echo. It didn't travel. It just died. Then the light bulb blinked. Once, twice, then darkness. I held my breath. The silence grew. Deeper, if that was even possible. I reached behind, feeling for the bed, and it wasn't there. I turned. The room had changed. The walls were farther apart now. A long hallway had replaced the far wall. Still no light. Just a dim glow from far ahead, like something breathing in the dark. I whispered hello, and a whisper came back. Not repeating my words, just breathing. I walked forward. The floor changed from cold concrete to something soft, almost like moss. The hallway stretched endlessly, and the air thickened. It started to smell like something old. Not rot, not dust, but like memories that had been forgotten too long. I didn't remember walking this long. It felt like time stopped inside that corridor. Finally, I reached a new room. It was familiar. My childhood bedroom. The posters, the bookshelf, the nightlight shaped like a rocket. It was exactly how I left it when I turned 13. Even the burn mark on the carpet from when I spilled my chemistry set. I walked around slowly, goosebumps covering my arms. I touched the desk. It was real. Solid, cold. Then I saw it. My reflection, not in a mirror, but in the window glass. Except, I wasn't moving. The reflection just stood there, staring back at me. I blinked, it didn't. I turned. The window showed nothing but black. No stars, no moon, just void. The reflection stood behind me now, motionless. I didn't dare turn back around. Then it whispered, not out loud, inside me. You don't belong here. I ran. I don't remember which way. I just kept running, back through the hallway, back into another room, but this one wasn't the same. It looked like my living room, but altered. Too many picture frames on the wall. Some were of me, but taken from strange angles, through the blinds, over my shoulder, from behind while I cooked. Photos I never took. Someone had been watching me. A phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up. A message, you're not supposed to be awake. Then the power cut again. I was in pitch blackness. My heart thudded loudly, too loudly. I could feel it in my ears. That's when I heard the keyhole sound. Click, click, click. Not from the door, from the wall. I pressed my eye to the spot. Nothing. Then something blinked on the other side. A single, massive eye, pale white with a pinprick iris. It was watching me. I fell back, hitting the floor hard. The walls began closing in, slowly, like they were breathing. I screamed, "Where am I?" But my voice cracked and disappeared into the air like steam. Then the whispers returned from everywhere. You're awake, but you're not real. This room remembers what you forgot. She's waiting for you. She never stopped watching. And then a door appeared, on the floor. Yes, the floor. Without thinking, I opened it. I fell, downward, into 1,000 rooms that all looked like mine. Twisted versions, warped rooms, each with someone sleeping in my bed. Someone brushing my teeth, someone sitting at my desk. Every single one was me, but not me. They looked up at the same time. Each one whispered, "You woke up. You shouldn't have." I landed hard, this time in a small nursery. A crib sat in the middle. empty. A baby monitor buzzed. I picked it up at first, just static. Then eyes, in the crib, staring straight into the lens. I looked down at the crib in front of me. Empty. I looked back at the monitor. Still eyes. The door creaked behind me. I turned slowly. She was standing there, the woman. I didn't know her, but I knew her. Face pale, eyes black, like spilled ink. Her mouth didn't move, but her voice filled the room. You left me in the room. I never left. And now you're here. We all are, I screamed. Ran again, door to door, room to room. Each time I woke up in another room that didn't exist. Rooms that should have been dreams, but weren't. Some were underwater, some upside down, some full of dolls that moved when I blinked. Some had no doors at all. Some had walls made of mirrors where I had no reflection. One room had only one thing in it. A version of me, sitting in the corner, whispering, "Don't sleep. Don't sleep. Don't sleep." Now, I don't know how long I've been here. I'm awake. But I never know where I'll wake up. Every time I blink, the room changes. Every time I close my eyes, she gets closer. I scratched a note into the wall of this room, in case someone else ends up here. If you're reading this, don't trust the room. Don't trust your eyes. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep, because the moment you do, the room resets. And one day, you won't wake up at all. When I moved into the house on Windmere Lane, I was simply looking for peace. After years of living in the noise and lights of the city, I needed something still, something quiet. The house was old, yes, but strong, the kind of architecture that carried stories in its bones. Stone fireplace, creaking floorboards, ivy climbing the brick outside. The real estate agent had shrugged when I asked about the extra room. Could be an office, a library. Has a weird window though. I should have paid more attention to that last part. The window didn't look strange at first. Just a large, old-fashioned, double-paned window that faced the garden. But the moment I walked into that room the first night, I felt strange. Like I'd entered a place that was paused in time, holding its breath. Dust hung in the air, motionless. The air smelled like cold paper. And when I looked through the window for the first time, I didn't see the garden. I saw a little boy playing with a red ball. There were no children in the house. There hadn't been for years. The garden had overgrown bushes, dry grass, and no toys, but through the window, it was fresh, lively. A woman sat in a white rocking chair under the tree, humming something soft, brushing her child's hair. I blinked, and the scene was gone. The garden was back to what it should have been. Wild, unkempt, quiet. I didn't tell anyone. What would I even say? That my window showed me things that didn't exist. But that was only the beginning. The next evening, it showed something different. It was dusk, and the same garden was visible. But this time, the boy was crying. The woman in white was gone. He stood alone, holding his ball, looking up at something just outside the frame of the window. He mouthed something. I leaned closer. It looked like, "Don't let it in." The image flickered and vanished again. From that day forward, I couldn't stop checking the window. Every night, it showed me something else. Not visions, no moments, memories. A man proposing under the tree. A woman reading a letter and collapsing in tears. A shadowy figure digging in the garden under moonlight. Some moments were joyful. some so soaked in grief that I could almost taste it. I became obsessed. I skipped work, ate little, slept in the chair in front of the window. The room was always cold, like the window breathed out frost. And one night, I saw myself, through the window, in the garden. Sitting under the tree was me, my posture, my clothes. Even the book I'd left in the kitchen. I stood up in horror and backed away, but the reflection, no, the other me, stayed seated, still, then slowly turned his head toward the window. Not toward me, through me. His eyes were hollow. That night, I dreamed of the house burning, fire licking up the walls, glass shattering, and that room glowing red. In the dream, the window didn't burn. It only pulsed, like it was alive. Watching, I tried to leave. I packed a bag, called a cab, and waited outside. But when the car arrived and I opened the door, I was standing back in the window room. No memory of walking. No sense of how I got there. The house wouldn't let me go. Every window in the house now showed a reflection of something else. Not the outside, but memories that weren't mine. A wedding that never happened. A man sitting at a dinner table with his hands covered in blood. A girl standing silently in a nightgown, staring at something above the camera. The only normal window was the one in the basement. I didn't want to go down there, but eventually, I did. The air was thick with rot. Water dripped. The bulb flickered as I pulled the chain. And there it was, another window. Same style. But this one looked into complete blackness. Not even my own reflection. I stepped closer. My breath fogged the glass. Then I heard it tapping. From the other side. And then, a whisper. I saw you watching me. I screamed and ran, locking every door behind me. But locks don't matter when the house itself is dreaming you into a box. Because now, every time I blink, I wake up. In the garden, but not the real one. The one from the window. The grass is green again. The woman in white is back, but her face is blurred. The boy doesn't speak. The air never changes. And when I look back at the house from this false garden, I see myself through the window watching, aging, fading. I'm not sure which one of us is real anymore, but I know this much. The window doesn't show the past, it creates it, and I'm now part of its memory. Forever framed in glass. When I first moved into this house, I thought I had found peace. It was tucked away at the end of a silent street lined with withering trees. The windows creaked when the wind blew, and the floorboards groaned like old men sighing in their sleep. I loved it. Quiet, undisturbed. The kind of place where you could hear yourself think. I work from home. I rarely go out, which is why I noticed it so quickly. It began subtly, just a shift in feeling. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and paused. The fridge was still humming, the light still flickered above the sink, but the spice rack was on the opposite wall. I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember if I had moved it. Maybe I had. I do things on autopilot sometimes. I laughed it off. A tired mistake. Nothing more. But the next day, the living room rug was no longer centered. It was closer to the hallway, and the coffee table sat crookedly atop it, as if it had been dragged. I hadn't moved it, I was sure. Still, I straightened it, ignored the chill in my spine, and got back to work. Then came the hallway mirror. It used to face the stairs. I know this. I picked that exact spot to catch natural light during the day. But when I stepped out of my bedroom the next morning, the mirror was turned, facing the wall, completely backward. I stood frozen, toothbrush still in hand, foam dripping from my mouth. That wasn't something you could brush off as forgetfulness. I live alone. The following night, I set up my phone to record a time-lapse of the living room, just to ease my mind. I went to bed a little uneasy, the shadows in the corners feeling heavier than usual. At 3:12 a.m., the video caught something, not a person, not a figure. The rug moved, slowly on its own. First a nudge, then an inch. Then the lamp next to the couch flickered and tilted just slightly, like something brushed past it. There was no wind, no open window. I should have left, but I didn't. I told myself it could be the house settling, vibrations, maybe mice. But it wasn't. The next morning the hallway was shorter, not metaphorically, physically shorter. I walked from my room to the kitchen and noticed the hallway had lost about a foot. The walls had closed in. The pictures on the wall were closer together. I ran my hand along the surface. No signs of remodeling, no patches, no tools, no dust. Just shorter, and then the scratching started. It wasn't loud, not like a rat or a cat. It was soft, like fingernails dragging across fabric. It came from inside the walls at night. Always after 3 a.m., always behind me, never in front. I began marking things with tape. I put a piece of red electrical tape on every doorway, every picture, every baseboard. I wanted proof, tangible evidence that things were moving, and they were. Every morning, something changed. Not just moved, altered. One morning, the window in the guest room was gone. Where there was once glass and light, there was now wall, seamless like it had never existed. Another day, my bathroom. Door was an inch taller. My coffee mug had no handle. My bedroom lamp had 3 settings instead of 2. And the hallway kept shrinking. My dreams became stranger. I saw the house, but not as it is. As it was broken, empty, covered in ivy and rot. I wandered through the halls in my sleep, feeling them pulse around me. Sometimes I saw her, the woman with long dark hair, and hands too long to be real, standing in the corners, just out of reach, never moving, but always watching. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and opened the front door. It led to the basement. My knees buckled. I slammed it shut, hyperventilating, before trying every other door in the house. Bedroom, guest room, pantry. Each opened to the same thing, that cold, dark basement, getting deeper and deeper each time I looked. I screamed until my voice cracked. When I opened the front door again, the street was there, but the sky was too red, too silent. Nothing moved. No birds, no cars, no wind, just stillness. Like the world outside had been painted on glass. I didn't step out. I closed the door. The next morning, I woke up in a room I didn't recognize. The wallpaper was peeling. The bed was iron instead of wood. My bookshelf was gone, and in its place was a tall, narrow cabinet filled with jars I didn't own. Each jar had a name, my name, again and again. On scraps of paper, old photographs, handwritten letters. And then the mirror showed up. It was massive, floor to ceiling, and in its reflection, I wasn't alone. She stood behind me, the woman with no eyes, just hollow blinking pits where her gaze should have been. but I couldn't turn around. I tried. My body wouldn't respond. Only my eyes moved, watching as she raised her hand in the mirror, placed her long fingers on my shoulder, and leaned forward. I felt her breath, cold, rotten, real. She whispered, "You fit the house now." I blacked out. When I woke up again, the hallway was gone. No doors, no windows. Just one room, a perfect square. I don't remember what day it is anymore. I don't know if it's morning or night. There are no clocks here. Just one picture on the wall of me sleeping. And sometimes, the layout still changes. But now, I don't. I've become part of the house, and someone else just moved in. They'll notice the rug soon, and the hallway, and maybe, if they're lucky, they'll leave before the house decides to keep them too. I moved into the house alone. It was a quiet 2-story in a town that hadn't changed in 50 years. Wide streets, creaking porches, polite neighbors who waved without asking questions. Exactly the kind of silence I needed after what happened in the city. No one told me about the basement. It wasn't in the listing. It wasn't on the floor plan. I only found it on the third night, when I dropped a spoon in the kitchen and watched it roll to a small bump in the linoleum, a square, cut perfectly. I pried it open and found stairs, steep and cold, leading down into pitch black. The light switch didn't work. The bulb was dead, or maybe the wires were, or maybe something else. I didn't go down that night. I closed the hatch, slid the fridge over it for good measure, and forgot about it. Almost, but the next morning, the fridge had been moved, just a few inches to the side. The hatch was cracked open. I was sure I locked it. I chalked it up to poor flooring. Maybe the fridge rolled a little. Maybe I didn't shut the hatch properly. That night, I locked it again. This time, I nailed it shut. Hammered 6 long nails through the hatch corners. I even placed salt around it, like I'd seen in those old ghost movies, though I didn't believe in that crap. Next morning, the nails were out. Not broken, not bent, just removed. Each one laid neatly on the floor beside the open hatch. That day, I called the realtor, asked if there was any mention of a basement. She was quiet for a long time. I thought that was sealed. She finally whispered, "That house was never supposed to be sold again." I asked her what she meant, but she hung up. Her number disconnected the next day. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the basement hatch with a flashlight, a kitchen knife, and 3 cups of coffee. Hours passed. Nothing happened. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of wood and hum of the refrigerator. At 3:14 a.m., something knocked from below. 3 knocks. Not like fists, but slow, hollow thuds, like bone against wood. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knocking stopped. Then the hatch rattled gently, just for a second, like someone testing the lock. I screamed, threw the flashlight down the hatch, and it rolled to a stop on one of the steps, lighting a patch of cold cement. There was nothing there. I nailed it shut again. Double this time. 16 nails, salt, furniture, everything. Next morning, the hatch was wide open. The flashlight was back on the kitchen counter. Still on. I moved out the same day. Booked a hotel on the edge of town. But here's the part I haven't told anyone. That night in the hotel, I locked the bathroom door. I wasn't taking chances anymore. I slept with the lights on, a chair wedged under the doorknob. At 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of the tap running in the bathroom. The door was wide open. The mirror was fogged. On the steamed glass, written in a finger smear, were the words, "Don't lock me out." I moved cities after that. Bought a condo on the 12th floor. No basement, no attic, no creaky floors. I even installed cameras everywhere, all exits sealed. For a while, everything was normal. Until last week, the cameras stopped recording between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. My front door stays locked. My windows bolted. But every morning, my closet door is open. Just slightly, and there's salt. Scattered on the floor, in a perfect circle that I didn't put there. Last night, I locked the closet. Pushed a heavy desk in front of it. This morning, the door was open again, and there were footprints in the salt. Barefoot, small, like a child's, but I live alone, at least I thought I did. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling was not mine. It was high, dome-shaped, with swirling patterns carved into old, fading plaster. A brass chandelier with unlit candles hung directly above me. The smell of dust and dried roses hung thick in the air, and the morning light didn't feel like morning at all. It was pale. Lifeless, the kind of light that reveals more than it should. I sat up slowly. The bed was grand, too grand. The wooden posts were carved with cherubs whose faces had been worn smooth with time. I looked down at myself. I was in the same clothes I fell asleep in, sweatpants, a t-shirt. But the bedspread was heavy, velvet, deep maroon, embroidered in a floral pattern I didn't recognize. The sheets were cold. I wasn't home. I don't remember leaving my apartment. I don't remember dreaming. Just darkness, and then this room, quiet. So quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I climbed out of bed. The floorboards creaked beneath me, old, warped wood, polished yet dry. There was a tall mirror across the room. I walked toward it, but my reflection didn't follow right. It was delayed, as though watching me, not reflecting. Me, I blinked. It didn't. I stepped back, heart racing. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob. The door opened before I could touch it. The hallway beyond was narrow, the walls wallpapered in pale yellow with faded roses. A grandfather clock stood at the end, ticking slowly, but the hands weren't moving. No footsteps, no voices. Just an ever-present hum, like distant thunder, trapped behind the walls. I called out, "Hello." Silence answered. I walked slowly, barefoot. Every room I peeked into looked unlived. One was a dining room with a table set for 7, but the plates were covered in dust. The glasses were half full of yellowed water. There was no kitchen, just closed doors, faded paintings, and endless stillness. When I passed the study, I felt it, a change in the air, a presence. I turned. There was a portrait on the wall. A woman, early 30s, dressed in Victorian black, pale face, dark hair pulled tightly back, her eyes. They were looking at me, not in the usual way that old paintings seem to look at you. No, these eyes adjusted to where I moved. They were aware. I stepped forward. Her gaze didn't waver. I whispered, "Who are you?" The chandelier above me swayed slightly, though there was no wind. A soft thump echoed through the ceiling, like something walking overhead, slow, rhythmic. I moved away, heart pounding, and took the stairs up. The second floor was worse. Dimly lit, with doors that didn't match. Some had knobs, some didn't. One door was sealed shut with red wax across its edges. Another was open just a crack, but no matter how hard I pushed, it wouldn't move further. I opened the door at the end of the hall. Inside was a nursery. Tiny toys lined the shelves. A rocking horse sat in the corner, unmoving. But the crib was what held me in place, because someone was already standing over it. A woman, her back was turned to me, black dress, same dark hair as the woman in the portrait. She was humming, a soft, slow lullaby. I took a step back, and the floor creaked. She stopped humming, but didn't turn. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat locked, and then she vanished, gone, just like that. The crib was empty. But as I stepped closer, I saw something nestled beneath the blanket. A baby monitor. I picked it up. It turned on by itself. Static first, then a low whispering breath, then eyes, two glimmering eyes appeared on the screen, peering straight into the lens. Not the eyes of a child. Not the eyes of anything human. I dropped the monitor. It didn't break. It didn't even bounce. It simply disappeared before it hit the ground. I ran down the stairs, into the parlor. I searched for the front door, but found only a tall window. Outside, everything was wrong. The sky wasn't blue or gray. It was a dim, bruised purple, with clouds frozen in place. The trees didn't sway. They didn't even have leaves. Just black, skeletal branches that scraped the sky. Then I saw her, reflected in the window. She stood behind me, motionless, just barely visible. I turned fast, but nothing was there. I didn't know how to leave. I couldn't find my phone. No clocks worked. The air grew colder, with every hour, whatever passed 4 hours here. That night, I tried to sleep again, but I kept waking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, closer. Her expression never changed. Her lips never moved. But I could feel her speaking to me, telling me not to leave, telling me this was where I belonged now, that the bed had chosen me. The second night, the bed was different. The sheets were damp. The mattress felt hollow, as if I was sinking slowly into something deeper. I pulled myself out and found my skin covered in dust, my hands smelling like dried flowers and wax. I slept on the floor, but even then, I dreamed of her standing over the bed, looking down at me with eyes that never blinked. The third night, I noticed something else. The portrait of her was gone from the hallway wall. I found it in the nursery, and now, the baby in the crib was no longer missing. It was there, still. Too still, I didn't go near it. I tried to leave again, but every door brought me back to the same hallway, over and over. Sometimes, the hallway was shorter, sometimes longer. Once, it curved when it had never curved before. The wallpaper changed slightly each time, as though I was being watched for my reaction. Every time I slept, she got closer. Her face, her breath, her presence. I stopped sleeping, but then came the sixth night. I collapsed from exhaustion, and when I awoke, I was in a hospital room. Bright lights, monitors beeping, nurses whispering. They said I'd been found in the middle of the woods, dehydrated, unconscious, with scratches all over my arms. They said I had no identification. No memory of how I got there. I told them everything. They called it a fugue state, trauma, delusion. They ran tests. I passed them all. Eventually, they let me go. I returned to my apartment. My keys still worked. Everything was untouched, but the bed wasn't mine. It looked the same, but it wasn't. The legs had carvings, swirling patterns, faded roses. And that night, as I lay awake, afraid to close my eyes, I saw her again in the mirror. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light. She was behind me, watching, still watching, because I woke up in a different bed, and maybe I never really left. I moved into the apartment on the 1st of September. The landlord was an older woman who barely looked up when I signed the lease. She told me it had been vacant for nearly a year, though she didn't say why. The rent was unusually low for the city, and the neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. I convinced myself I was just lucky. The apartment had a strange layout. One long hallway, a kitchen with only one small window, and a bedroom that always felt a few degrees colder than the rest of the flat. The only furniture I brought was my reading chair and a mattress. Everything else was meant to be minimal. New city, new job, clean start. The first night I slept on the floor with the mattress directly over the wooden planks. As I lay there, in the dim glow from the hallway nightlight, I heard a faint tapping sound. Not loud, not sharp, just persistent. I chalked it up to old pipes. But by the third night, it changed. The sound was no longer random. It came in rhythm. 3 soft knocks. Pause. Then again, it came from beneath me. I lifted the mattress the next morning, assuming maybe the wood was shifting or there were rats underneath. But what I saw made my heart freeze. There was another bed, not just an outline or a forgotten cot. A fully formed bed frame, black, iron, ornate, with a thin, dusty mattress. It hadn't been there before. I would have noticed something so large. I stared at it, waiting for logic to settle in. Nothing came. I touched the frame, cold, too cold. I knelt beside it and lifted. The sheet was yellowed and brittle, like it hadn't been touched in decades. There was a pillow, a shallow depression in its center, as though someone had just risen from it. My chest tightened. I backed away, put my mattress back over it, and didn't sleep that night. By the end of the week, I began to feel watched. The tapping under the bed turned into gentle thuds. I moved the mattress, checked again. The bed was still there, same place. But now, it looked cleaner. The pillow was fluffed. The sheet was straighter. Someone had touched it. Or something. I told myself it was all in my head. Stress, exhaustion, anxiety. But on the 9th night, I woke up to something I couldn't explain. It was exactly 3 a.m. I know this because my phone screen lit up, unprompted, with the time glowing beside. The bed I couldn't move. Not frozen with fear, paralyzed, like something was holding me down. The room was pitch black, though I always left the hallway light on. The sound of breathing filled the room, but it wasn't mine. Shallow, rasping, and close. Then I felt it. Something shift beneath the mattress. A slow, deliberate push upward, like someone was lying directly underneath and stretching. My body jerked, and I broke free from whatever had held me. I scrambled off the bed and turned the lights on. Nothing. Just the floor. My mattress. but the air smelled different, sweet and sickly, like perfume and decay. I ripped the mattress off. The second bed was gone. Gone. I stood there, stunned, fingers trembling. Had it been a hallucination? Was I sleepwalking? Dreaming? I stayed up all night, watching the floor. The next day, I went out. I didn't want to be in that room. I walked aimlessly, ending up at an antique bookstore. The old man running it noticed how tired I looked. "You live on Beale Street, don't you?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yeah," he narrowed his eyes. "You, in apartment 3. I nodded slowly. His face changed. "They never told you, did they?" "Told me what?" "That place was part of an old boarding house. Used to belong to a woman who took in travelers, mostly men. They say she'd put something in there, tea. And when they fell asleep, she'd make them a bed beneath their own. Then she'd sleep under them every night, listening, smiling, waiting." My skin turned to ice. I went home in daylight, convinced I was imagining things, but when I opened the door, the smell was back stronger now. That same perfume man-mold stench. I walked to my room, and the bed was back, but this time, someone was in it, not clearly. Just the faint silhouette of a woman under the sheets, her form too still, too sharp. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I backed out slowly, left the apartment, and stayed in a hotel. But I made the mistake of going back the next night. I had to know. I had to see. And when I entered the room, she was no longer under the bed. She was on mine, lying perfectly still, hands on her chest, eyes closed. As if waiting, I ran. I called the police. They found no one, no second bed, no woman. But I can't stay anywhere now. Wherever I go, wherever I sleep, I wake up to the smell. The tapping returns, and then I check under the bed, and she's there. She always is. No matter where I move, where I hide, the bed finds me. Because it was never the apartment, it was me. I found another bed under mine. Now I sleep above her, every night, and she's getting closer. I remember locking the door before I slept. I remember placing my phone on the nightstand, dimming the bedside lamp, and lying under the covers in my one-bedroom apartment. I even remember the dull hum of my fridge, the ticking wall clock, and the faint sound of traffic outside. Everything was as it had always been, familiar, predictable. But when I woke up, I wasn't in my apartment. I wasn't even in my bed. I was in a house I didn't recognize, lying on an old mattress with yellowing sheets that smelled faintly of mold and smoke. The walls were faded green, with water stains bleeding down like long fingers. A fan creaked overhead, spinning too slowly to matter. I sat up, my pulse already racing. My shoes were neatly placed by the door. My phone was gone, and my clothes had changed. I was wearing an oversized gray t-shirt, not mine, and the air tasted like dust and static. There were no windows, just one closed wooden door, and the moment I stepped off the bed, the doorknob clicked and began to turn. I ran to the door, but it swung open before I reached it. An empty hallway stretched ahead, dim, silent, wallpaper peeling. Every few feet, a door stood slightly ajar, casting narrow shadows across the warped floorboards. I didn't know where I was or why, but every part of me screamed not to go deeper, yet I did. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. When I turned back to glance at the room I'd woken up in, It was gone. Just another segment of hall, identical to the rest. My throat dried, my breath started hitching, and that's when I saw it. A portrait, framed in black wood, hanging crooked on the wall. A painting of a woman in an old-fashioned nightgown, sitting stiffly in a chair. Her face was pale, nearly featureless, but the eyes were detailed, hyper-realistic, bright, and they were looking directly at me. I moved left, they followed. I moved right, they followed. I blinked. They didn't. I turned away and continued walking, trying not to let the panic explode in my chest. I didn't remember how I got here. I didn't remember any dreams. No drugs, no parties, nothing. This wasn't some prank. This was real. At the end of the hallway, I found a bathroom. Tiny, old, but working. I leaned over the sink, splashed water on my face, looked into the mirror, and saw her. A woman, standing right behind me, pale skin, long, black, wet hair, hollow eyes, not angry, not violent, just still, staring. I turned around instantly. No one was there. I was alone, but the mirror had fogged with a breath that wasn't mine. 3 words appeared slowly in the condensation. You see me. I ran from the bathroom and slammed into a new hallway. Not the one I came from. Different wallpaper. Different floor. Same portrait. Same eyes. Watching. I blinked again. My own reflection from before flashed in my mind. But this time, my eyes were still closed. Yet, I saw her. I closed my eyes tight, and still saw her standing there, now behind the door, now beside the bed, now watching from the keyhole. I found another room, a child's room, empty crib, rocking horse, a dusty baby monitor on a nightstand, flickering green. I picked it up. Static crackled, then thump, then breathing, then faintly a whisper. Don't let her in. The crib creaked. I turned toward it, and for just a moment, I saw a pair of eyes, small, glowing, inhuman. Then they vanished. I dropped the monitor and ran again, turning corners in a house that never ended, rooms that repeated, hallways that bent into themselves. I started screaming for help, until my voice echoed back at me, but slower, distorted, as if something else was mimicking my panic. In the next room, there was a guest bed made and neatly arranged. I paused. I lived alone. I never had a guest room. And yet the sheets were warm, as if someone had just been sleeping there. From the wardrobe, I heard breathing, but I didn't dare open it. I tried marking the walls with my fingernails, left cuts, scratches, blood, yet each time I looped back, the walls were clean. But the portrait, that always remained, same woman, same blank stare, same eyes that moved when I didn't. I ripped it off the wall once. Beneath it was another portrait, the same one, like it was part of the house now, like she was part of the house. I found a calendar in the kitchen. It showed today's date, except each page was filled with one line, scrawled over and over. I woke up in a different bed, in a different house, again and again and again. I'm not writing this from my apartment. I'm not even sure if my apartment still exists. Each time I sleep, I wake up in another version of this place. Slightly different, slightly worse. Sometimes the hallway moans. Sometimes the walls bleed. Sometimes I hear crying under the floorboards. Sometimes I hear laughing in the ceiling. But no matter what changes, one thing stays the same. She's always here, watching, never speaking, never moving. Just watching. Last night, I found a mirror in the hallway. In it, I wasn't alone. There were dozens of people behind me, their faces half gone, their hands raised like they were pressing against glass from inside. I blinked. They didn't. Then one of them whispered, "We saw her too. Tonight." The portrait's eyes were crying, not tears, blood. And her mouth was open for the first time. I don't want to know what happens if I sleep again. But I'm so tired. She's waiting by the bed, smiling. I don't know how to explain this in a way that makes sense. But I swear I am not dreaming. At least, I don't think I am. I fell asleep in my own bed last night in my studio apartment, 3rd floor, city center. I remember everything. The soft whir of my ceiling fan, the LED alarm clock glowing 12:41 a.m., the faint sound of traffic outside, the book I left half open on my chest. But when I opened my eyes this morning, the ceiling above me was pale blue, wooden, old, and there was no ceiling fan. The sheets weren't mine either, scratchy and gray, not the soft cotton navy blue I always use. The mattress beneath me felt dense, too firm, as if stuffed with hay. I sat up slowly, heart pounding. My breath fogged in front of me. The room was freezing. No heater, no city sounds, just silence. The bedroom was unfamiliar. The walls were made of faded wood, nailed unevenly, like a poorly built cabin. There was a window across from me, covered in thick, yellowed curtains. The air smelled of mildew and dust, and under it, something sharp, like rusted metal, or dried blood. I whispered to myself, "You're dreaming," over and over. But everything felt too solid, too real. The cold bit into my skin. I pinched my arm. It hurt. I stood on the creaky floor and noticed something else. There were no doors, only that single window, and something stranger in the center of the far wall hung a portrait. A large, rectangular painting in an ornate wooden frame. It was a woman, wearing an old-fashioned dress. Victorian, maybe. Her skin was pale, almost grayish, and her eyes were wrong. They were too detailed, too lifelike, too focused on me. I turned my back to the painting. I walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. Nothing, just endless fog. No streets, no buildings, no sun. Just thick, impenetrable whiteness beyond the glass. Like the house was floating in a blank world. I tapped the glass. Solid, cold. No sound came from outside. Not even wind. I turned back toward the room. The painting had changed. The woman's head was tilted now, a little to the left, as if she had followed me with her gaze. I felt my stomach drop. I walked closer to inspect it. Her eyes still locked onto mine, but now her lips had parted slightly, like she was beginning to say something. No brushstrokes, no canvas texture. It was like looking into a still image of a real person behind a sheet of glass. I stepped back. My hands trembled. I muttered, "This isn't happening." Then I noticed the bed. It had moved. It was now pressed against the opposite wall, where the painting had been. I turned sharply. The painting was gone. No, it was worse. It was now above the bed, and her expression had changed again. She was smiling, wide, too wide. Her teeth weren't right. Too many, too sharp. I stumbled back into the corner of the room. I screamed, but no sound left my throat. I don't know how long I stayed like that, sitting on the cold wooden floor, arms around my knees, eyes fixed on the painting. But eventually, I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, I was back, in my own apartment, my own bed, my navy sheets, my ceiling fan slowly spinning above me. I thought maybe it was a nightmare, a vivid, horrible dream, until I looked at the wall across from me and saw the same portrait, same frame, same woman, same unnatural eyes. But now, her face was blank again, serene, expressionless. I threw it out that morning, carried it down the fire escape, and tossed it in the dumpster. I came back up, took a hot shower, made coffee, and tried to forget it ever happened. That night, I went to sleep with all the lights on, and woke up in that same cabin again. Different bed, same freezing room, same painting, now with the woman leaning out slightly, her hands resting on the frame. She was looking down at me, not painted real, like she was pushing her way out. This time I screamed, and this time I heard something knock back from inside the walls. Every night since then, it's a cycle. Sleep, wake up in that other place. Sometimes I see her, walking slowly around the bed. Sometimes I feel her hands stroke my hair while I pretend to be asleep. Once, I opened my eyes in the middle of the night, and she was lying beside me, eyes wide open, smiling. I don't know what she wants. I don't know how she followed me here. But every day, that painting looks a little more empty, like less of her is in the frame. And every night, I see more of her in my room. The bed I'm in right now feels too cold, too scratchy, and the painting above me, it's completely empty now. She's not inside it anymore. She's in the room, and she's waiting for me to fall asleep.